The afternoon sun was slowly setting, coloring the sky with gentle shades of orange and gold. On a quiet street lined with trees heavy with ripening fruit, the sun's last rays struggled to peek between their leafy branches. It was a typical summer evening, peaceful and serene. But for an old man walking slowly down the sidewalk, it was tinged with a quiet desperation. He leaned a little on his stick, his shadow stretching long and thin in front of him like a supplicating hand. His clothes, once a source of pride, were now threadbare and hanging loosely on his thin frame. His steps were unsteady, not just because of age, but also because his stomach had been empty for most of the day. He had spent the hours since morning going from one house to another, hoping someone might spare a little food. Most people were busy, rushing home after a day's work or out with friends and family. Some saw him and smiled politely, but shook their heads. Others didn't even seem to notice him as he passed by. The old man did not complain. Life had taught him patience. Still, as evening came, his legs grew weak and he looked around for a place to sit. Finding the front step of a small house, he lowered himself onto it gently, breathing heavily. It was a charming house with neat flower beds and a porch swing that had probably held many happy couples in its time. Now it was empty, its windows dark except for the faint glow coming from inside. The old man closed his eyes for a moment, letting the familiar smells of home-cooked meals drift through the neighborhood. He smelled warm soup, fresh rice, bread just taken out of the oven. It was like a cruel joke played by fate. He sighed, pushing away the invasive thoughts of food and warmth. These were memories he could barely afford to hold onto anymore. He had to let go, just as he had let go of so much else in his life. He folded his hands and whispered softly, "Perhaps tomorrow will be kinder." As if in response to his words, he heard the sound of light footsteps. He opened his eyes, but the street was almost empty. On the step beside him, however, lay a small loaf of bread wrapped carefully in brown paper. On top of it was a folded note. The old man looked around. There was no one in sight. Maybe the person had quickly walked away, not wanting to be noticed. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the bread and the note. Unfolding the paper, he saw that it was blank except for a few childishly scrawled letters and numbers. "To Grandpa," it said, and below it, a smiley face had been drawn. Below that, in the same uneven handwriting, was written the date, June 26th. Then came the message itself, also in the same childish handwriting. "I believe you will smile when you eat this." For a long time, he could not move. His eyes grew moist, and a warmth spread through his chest. Someone had thought of him. Someone, perhaps very young, cared enough to leave this gift without asking for thanks. He could feel tears pricking at his eyes, blurring the image of the quaint street and the house with the empty porch swing. The old man carefully unwrapped the bread. Its smell was rich and comforting. As he took a bite, he felt his body relax. It was soft, still warm, and more delicious than any meal he had eaten in years. He didn't know who had made this bread, but whoever it was, they had put a lot of love into it. And in that moment, the old man understood that what he really needed was not just food, but human touch, the reminder that he was not forgotten, that he still mattered. Tears rolled down his cheeks not from sadness, but from gratitude. He whispered, "Bless the hands that made this. Bless the heart that left it here." Each bite filled him with strength, not only for his body, but for his soul. The loneliness he had carried all day seemed lighter, as if the simple loaf of bread had brought back the warmth of being remembered. When the bread was finished, he carefully folded the little note and placed it in the pocket of his shirt. He knew he would keep it forever. To others, it might be just a piece of paper. To him, it was proof that kindness still lived in the world. That night, he slept more peacefully than he had in a long time. And in the morning, when he woke up, he rose with new strength. His stomach was no longer empty, but more importantly, his heart was full. From that day on, whenever he felt lonely, he would touch the pocket where the note was kept and remind himself someone out there believed he could still smile. Many years later, after the old man had passed away, that same loaf of bread and the note continued to live on in the hearts of those who had known about them. The story became a local legend, a tale told to remind children to be kind and to never underestimate the power of a simple act of generosity. One sunny afternoon, not long after the old man's death, a young woman was sitting on the porch swing of that same house. She was a picture of youthful energy and optimism, the complete opposite of the old man. Yet she was troubled. She had come across the story of her grandmother and the mysterious old man, and couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She had been too busy to notice the old man, just like everyone else. And now he was gone. What if he had been hungry? What if he had been cold? Her thoughts raced, filled with regret and questions. Suddenly, she remembered the story of the loaf of bread. Her grandmother had always made sure that if anyone came by asking for food, they would not leave empty-handed. It was a lesson in compassion that the young woman had learned well. But that day, she had been too preoccupied to follow her own teachings. As she sat there, an idea struck her. Why not make some bread? She thought, smiling, remembering how her grandmother used to bake every Sunday. So she got up and went to the kitchen. Flour, water, yeast, salt, and oil. The ingredients were simple, just like the old man's request. Kneading the dough, she sang an old folk song, her voice echoing through the rooms. As the bread rose, she hummed, thinking about how it would feel to share this with others. Later, when it was baked and cooling on a rack, she wrote a note. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Placing the bread and the note on the windowsill, she hoped that whoever passed by would understand that there was someone in that house who cared. She stood back, watching the house with a newfound sense of purpose. In that moment, she realized that the legacy of kindness was in her hands now. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across the lawn, she knew that her grandmother would have been proud.